October 26th, 2020. You are listening to the Inquisitive Bro podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the ins, outs, and misconceptions regarding the world of Scotch. The single malts, the blends, the do's and do nots when purchasing, storing, and most importantly, consuming, as well as everything else in between. And to help us do that, we have in studio none other than the man, the legend, Scotch aficionado, and film connoisseur himself, Matthew Matt Lon. Homie, what's going on? You ready to do this?
What's happening, baby? That's what we're talking about. We doing this.
He's ready. Now, whether you're a mister, a madam, I assure you any questions or hesitations you've had about the mysteries of Scotch will be answered today. And as always, the voice you all know and love. He heard we were bringing samples, so we decided to show up. Chris is here.
I'm already way deep in the samples. I don't know what I'm going to provide on this pod in terms of content, but drinking, I can do that.
I'm Andrew. He's Chris. We've got Matt in the studio, and we've got samples. Let's go. All right, so as we said in the intro, Matt's here, Chris is here. We do have some samples.
We're going to get to those.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. Matt, I'm going to start with you, man. Scotch, a lot of people don't get it, don't like it, or just plain and simply don't understand it. You yourself, I kind of wonder this because a lot of things, especially when it comes to alcohol, your palate does change. So something that you did not like at 18, 19, 20, 21, you may start to kind of get a feel for it into your late 20s, your 30s, maybe even your 40s. Was that the case with you? When did Scotch kind of make its way into your life?
So, started drinking at 19, and not 19 anymore. But there was a whole bunch of different, first beers and then gin.
Right.
And then I was watching a TV show one day, and they said there was a passing line about somebody just being obsessed with single malts. And I was like, what is a single malt? These guys are pretty cool looking.
Right.
And, I kind of want to know what that's all about. So...
Do you remember the show?
Yeah.
What
it
was
was
it?
House of Cards.
Okay. Kevin Spacey.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the characters, he's obsessed with single malts, and I was like, I gotta check that out.
Right.
And so I Google searched. That's how it began, the Google search.
What year are we talking here?
This is probably 6 years ago.
Man, it's been 6 years since House of
the
Cards?
journey. No, since the journey began of the Scotch journey.
Right.
And so I started with the Google search, and then I went to the LCBO, picked up a bottle, went over to my boy's house, and was like, let's dig in. And the first time was good. It was fine. It was whiskey,
Yeah.
It was probably like a Glenlivet 12 or something like that. Great beginner malt, for sure. And then what we did was we crushed it in a week.
Right.
Okay. And then the next week there was another bottle. And probably the first year I spent way too much money. Way too much money.
Was this single Matt or was it?
This was single Matt. Oh,
okay,
yes.
So Matt had money to burn.
This was post breakup Matt. This was what is life Matt at this point? But
Right.
it's he's watching a lot of TV. He's drinking a lot of Scotch, you
Yeah.
know. And so we're on the couch, and get a bottle a week, basically, and just me and my buddy splitting it. And then I heard about this peat stuff.
Say it again. What's that word?
Peat.
Peat. Okay.
Yes, peat, with a P, like an Uncle Pete,
Gotcha.
but it's not spelled that way.
Okay.
But it's and I didn't know what it was. When I heard it, I was like, what's this peat stuff? And so I picked up this bottle of Bowmore 12 and took it to my other buddy's house and opened it up, and it was like I was hit in the face by this gasoline fire smell in my face. I'm like, this is disgusting. And poured a little bit, braved enough for the pour, and I tried to sip, and this is absolute garbage. I went to the fridge, grabbed a can of Coke, and poured it into the rest.
Right.
Poured the rest in there,
Right.
and even that was hard. So there's a lot of nuances to Scotch. There's a lot of different places it can go. It can go sweet. It can go that smoky peat stuff.
Right.
And I started off hating peat, but now I love it. That's good stuff, man.
Okay, so that's
Great
interesting. So
Quick question, actually. That House of Cards character, was that Remy Dalton on that?
No.
Oh, because he's by far the coolest character. Then who the hell got you into it?
It was the guy they take advantage of in the first season there.
Oh, Peter Russo.
Yeah, Russo, yeah.
You got into Scotch from a character who dies?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think-
Because
does
I
he
just
die,
wanted to
or-
know
I
what it
think
was. I was
He
super
dies.
curious.
He gets killed. He
He
gets killed.
kills
He kills
himself.
himself,
Yeah, buddy.
Oh, he gets
yeah.
left, but Frank lets him die.
yeah. Yes,
He sees
yes.
Okay. Cool.
But-
Like
hold up.
assisted suicide.
I want to go back to that main point. The Pete incident.
Yes.
How old would you say you were when that happened? I don't think we actually nailed down an age.
Well, I'm 72 now, so that
Right.
was
Carry the
that was a
one,
while.
couple years.
No, I was probably about 22, I guess, 23, 24,
Okay.
somewhere at 20, just before the mid 20s.
Right, and even with a previous bottle that you purchased that you did like, was it an immediate? It sounded like it was. It was an immediate.
Oh yeah, very immediate connection to the Scotch.
Okay, and
And
would you say that is the norm, or was that a bit of an anomaly? As far as people taking their first kind of Scotch for a run.
I think it depends on what they get first. If
You
they
think
get
so, eh?
Yeah, if they buy a bad quality bottle or something that's really kind of niche too early or something too strong, then they just might back away entirely and be like, oh, that's my favorite thing when people try something for the first time, like, yeah, no, and then they never touch it again because they had that one bad experience. Like tequila is legendary for that.
Right.
Yeah, everybody's got that bad tequila story.
Yeah.
And then they never touch it again. And it's like, I love sipping tequila. It's amazing. Back to the original question, though. I think if I picked up the Bowmore 12 the first time, the first bottle of Scotch that I went for, I don't think I would have continued
Right.
down this amazing journey.
Right. Well, good thing you did.
But it was number 7 along the list. Yeah, we wouldn't be here right now. That would break my heart.
So that was the intro. That's how you got a good start. Where did it take off from there? Because buying a bottle every once in a while and enjoying it is a long way away from where you are today, which is would you say a collector?
I prefer the term enthusiast.
Enthusiast,
Yes.
okay.
I don't have some kind of extensive, unbelievable wealth of knowledge. Like I didn't grow up in Scotland and
Why are we having you on this pod? Should we stop?
We were grossly misinformed.
but I'm enthused and I like to try bottles that not many people have. I see the reviews. Like I could go out and buy, 4 different bottles for, a couple $100 and write reviews about them like every other Joe Blow that's written a Glenmorangie 10 review. You know what I mean? Or a Glenlivet 12 review. But I want to try these unicorns, these unbelievably different stuff. And so what I did was I figured, okay, I got to try all of the entry level bottles. And that's what those weeks were, where it's just like, okay, this week Glenlivet 12, next week Glenfiddich 12, the week after that Dalmore 12,
So you
Highland
had
Park
this
12.
as like kind of a regiment.
Yeah, that was kind of the process, just trying different ones every so often, and then slowly leveling up from there to like higher age statements. So started off in the 10, 12 range, moved up into the 15s and then the 18s, and then I kind of found my niche in there. But some really good beginner malts that I discovered was like Glenmorangie, anything that comes from there.
So
Amazing
explain
stuff.
what that is. Is that a brand? Is that from a certain region?
Also,
Right.
actually, quick question on that. Like, what is a beginner malt versus like something that's more intense? Like, I don't
Okay, so
really, as a beginner myself, I don't
absolutely.
really-
So so beginner malts, they're a little bit more palatable. They're usually at like a lower ABV, alcohol by volume. So like a 40% is the lowest that they can put out Scotch as a product.
Actually, I had one point on that. I was texting Andrew today. Turns out that they actually have a piece of legislation in Scotland which specifies exactly what it takes for it to be quote unquote Scotch. I found
Absolutely.
this very interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of qualifications for it to be Scotch, and so So one of the things is that ABV, right, 40%, and typically, not as a total rule, but like typically younger Scotches are less complex. Not always, but typically they're less complex than older Scotch.
As in taste?
Yes, so there'll be a lot of different things that you can get off the palate or the nose. And if you're just starting out, it's going to blow by you, like right over your head. And you just be like, oh, this is great. This tastes yummy. And then the next one, this one tastes yummy too. But you're missing out on like the leathers and the, all the salted caramels and the umami notes and like all this stuff, right?
What's a young Scotch, by the way? You say like a young Scotch. What would that kind of consist of?
Yeah, a young Scotch is basically something that's, well, the youngest the Scotch can be is 3 barrel-aged years. Barrel age. So, but most of the times they don't want to put that on the label because it's embarrassing when there's, 50, 70-year-old Scotches out there.
Right. I mean, I guess like even for me as someone who barely drinks Scotch, if I see a 12 versus 3, I'm like, fuck that 3. Like,
absolutely,
I'm going to take a 12.
Absolutely. So what they end up doing is they'll just won't put an age statement on it. They won't say how old it is. And they call those NAS or no age statements, non-age statements. And
is that kind of jump in there? Is that kind of imply that it's probably around 3 or 5-ish?
Yeah, usually it's going to be around 5 to 8 years old, and that's why they don't want to say. The youngest typically that they'll mention is like 10 years. But then there's some distilleries that are kind of trying to break the mold and show what young Scotches can be, but young single malts can be. But yeah, it's so that's one of the youthful signs is for intro Scotches, something that's 10 to 12 years. That's when things start to reach a good maturation point for drinking.
So when you say intro Scotch, is that the same when you refer to beginner malts?
Yeah.
Like say I'm a novice, right?
Yeah.
And I'm walking into an LCBO.
Yeah.
What am I asking for?
You're looking for something 10 to 12 years old. You're looking for something 40 to 43% ABV.
Okay.
So when you get up higher than that, it's starting to be a little too aggressive maybe for you to start with.
Right.
And you want something like a Glenlivet 12. It's the biggest. It was the biggest selling brand for a long time for a reason. It's solid maturation. It's solid entry level. It's a good pour.
Is it an entry level price point as well?
Absolutely. That's another thing. Price, you're looking in around the $60 range is where you want to start, just to get your bearings.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you gave me ahead of time a list of some pretty good beginner malts.
Yeah.
Do you want to walk through maybe the differences between these? If I gotta pick one, I know you mentioned Glenlivet 12.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these other ones different, similar.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I pick one over the other?
I would pick them all.
Right.
We should mention that for the listeners out there, we are going to be throwing up this list of beginner Scotches up on the Instagram page in this episode's pod notes. So keep a lookout for that.
Yeah, we'll have that up there. We'll notify you guys so you can go out and you can take Matt's highly coveted recommendations and go pick out a bottle of your own.
Well, pick out multiple bottles apparently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to pick them all out. Yeah. These are all kind of a little bit different in their own right. Like Glenlivet or Glenfiddich 12, either or. They're a similar profile. You got Glenmorangie 10-year-old, the original. It's great stuff. It's bourbon barrel aged primarily. They're the tallest stills in Scotland, and that gets you a much lighter, fruitier floral note. You got the Glenfarclas 12. That's a great beginner Speyside malt. It's a lot more sherried influence. The two major casks that they use for maturing Scotch are sherry casks and bourbon casks. Those are the two major ones. And so with bourbon casks, it's a different type of whiskey, but it brings out your caramels and your vanillas and your more fruity light fruit notes like apples and pears and stuff like that.
So this actually, I'm going to stop you right there. This brings up a good point for one of my beginner questions. Mm-hmm. Can you please, for the listening audience, explain the difference between these terms: Scotch, whiskey, bourbon, rye?
Sure. So Scotch has to be produced in Scotland. Simple.
Kind of like those champagne and champagne.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
So all of those labels, bourbon, rye, Scotch, they they're all whiskeys.
They're all whiskeys, okay?
They're all whiskeys, but all bourbon is a whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
Gotcha.
All Scotch is whiskey.
What makes a bourbon a bourbon?
So bourbon is typically the like traditional way is like corn mash.
I see.
Rye is rye grain.
Right.
And then Scotch is typically malted barley.
Scotch is malted barley. Okay.
Yeah, but they all make whiskey, and it's all got to be like at least 3 years barrel age. And actually, in the States, they don't have to. It's a really general rule is that it has to be barrel aged. So it could be barrel aged for 1 day, and you could call it whiskey.
I see.
Or bourbon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But in Scotland, they're much more strict on their rules.
So how is then, I guess jumping on that point then, is how is a Scotch whiskey going to differ in the tastes and notes or what have you compared to your normal American bourbon and like a rye whiskey? Like how is it, if you had a blind sample, for example, you yourself having drank enough of this, would you be able to tell what a Scotch was and kind of like what would you be looking for to differentiate it?
To be honest, I haven't really dabbled in the bourbon world and the rye world too much because I've been very focused on my single malts. Okay, right. But if I started going into bourbon and rye, my wife would kill me because my bank account would just be completely drained. But
it's okay. I know your wife. I can put in a good word. I'll ease her pain.
But I'll tell her it's for this podcast. I got to do research, babe. Yeah. No, but the bourbons are much sweeter. And a lot of people like that stuff. That's what the draw is. They're hot, heavy, and sweet.
And why are they sweeter?
From the corn.
Okay.
From the corn, yeah. It's super, yeah. It's a super sweet grain, and it brings this like really almost cherry note. Then I don't really like that. It's like that cherry cough syrup kind of note that you get in the cheap stuff, and I just can't get around that. Even a cheap Scotch, you can bear it, but
you get that hint of medicine.
Yeah, it's really medicine. Like, yeah, I can't get behind it, and a lot of people are gonna hate me probably from this, but that's just how I feel. Okay.
Hey man, we keep it 100 here. Nothing but the truth. On the
I'm not gonna cater here. Okay.
No. Now you've actually brought beginner Scotch.
Yeah, so I brought a Glenmorangie 10-year-old for us to try. See what you guys think. See what you can bring out.
Yeah, that's why Chris is here.
Yeah,
but okay, we're gonna pop, pour, and let you know what we thought of it.
Sounds good.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the pod so far. You know, here at the Inquisitive Bro, we're always thinking about ways to enhance your listening experience. And that's why I'm very excited to tell you about a new podcast add-on we're doing called Pod Notes. Now you may be wondering, well, what are Pod Notes and where can I find them? Well, basically, during the podcast, you may hear us from time to time make references to videos, images, charts, or graphs that we can't visually share with you because, well, you're listening to us. This is where Pod Notes come in. All the visual references that we make during the podcasts are going to be bundled into a single Instagram post that you can find on our Instagram page at The Inquisitive Bro. So look out for this pod's Pod Notes and the Pod Notes for future pods to come. Now, back to the pod.
All right, so we're back. So we have now just poured the Glenmorangie 10, I believe. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Isn't Glenmorangie?
Glenmorangie.
Morangie. I said Morangie.
I didn't want to be that guy, but...
No, please. But this is why you're here, to correct novices like myself.
Yes, it is Glenmorangie. Yes.
That's good. Glad to...
Right, we just poured ourselves a dram of Glenmorangie. 10-year-old, that's the way.
Loving Matt with the accents. Like,
there's many.
That intro accent there, like people were thinking, like, who is this
guy
coming on this pod? Yeah. He is flamboyant as hell. He still is, but
we'll see how I am at the end of this pod after we've tried these samplers. You know what I mean?
You might not even be speaking English by the end of this pod.
By the end of this pod, I'm just going to call out people and just have them do impressions. Yeah. That's how we're going to end
exactly.
This. Okay, so perfect. Now, we haven't tasted it yet because I'm going to throw it back to you. Now, is it similar to wine, to where before you drink, there's a bit of a process? There's a decant, there's a swirl, a smell. You put it in your mouth.
This is you talking about wine, right?
This is wine, yeah. So I know a little bit about wine.
Yes.
Once you put it in your mouth, you want to move it around. Different parts of your mouth will taste different aspects of the wine. Mm-hmm. Is this similar?
It is similar.
Okay.
It is similar, but you might want to take a little bit less on the tongue when you're doing that. So when you pour the glass of Scotch, There's a general rule that it's like you let it sit in the glass a minute for every year in the cask.
Before consuming.
I gotta wait 10 minutes for this shit? I usually pour and chug. That's what I've
already.
learned.
He's falling into the traps here, people.
But see,
he's falling into the traps.
This is not Chris's area of expertise. Chris is usually a strawberry daiquiri kind of guy.
Hey,
that's a very pouring drink. That's a pouring drink right there.
This is what I learned at Queens, though. You pour, you drink, you party.
Well, yeah. You don't want to do that with the good stuff.
No,
that's
I
for
assure
sure.
you, at Queen's parties, they were not drinking this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No, I was not.
Okay, so you pour, you wait a minute for every year.
Yes.
The glass, impactful or a gimmick?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It makes a world of difference. I wish we should pour it into a normal glass and then pour it side by
we should
side
first
here.
address to the listeners what type of glass we have, because we don't have just a regular
These
glass.
will be on the pod notes. These are beautiful.
I bring glasses everywhere. So if you ever have me over for a little Scotch night, don't worry about your glasses. I got you covered. I'm coming hard with these glasses.
Would you describe this as hourglass?
So this is called a Glencairn glass. You can buy them on Amazon. They're relatively inexpensive. They are beautiful, and they were designed by a bunch of master blenders because it mimics I think it's called the Capita glass, which looks like a very small wine glass, and it's like that tulip shape. But this also has a little edge to it to block some of the harsher vapors that are coming out of the Scotch as well. So when you put it on an angle.
Gotcha.
Also, it's designed so that the crest of that circular bubble tulip area is 2 ounces, which is a decent bar pour. And a 2 ounce sample is typically what the whiskey world shares with each other, and they'll send samples all across the world to each other. And a 2 ounce sample is standard, and that's exactly where the crest of this glass is.
Now, if you go to a bar or a lounge and you order something straight up, are you determining ahead of time how much you want? Like, what is the standard that they're going to bring you without you saying anything?
So if you don't say anything, they'll probably give you an ounce,
right?
Or they'll give you 2.
Well, that doesn't give me many answers, does it?
Well, a bar typically has a menu. The bar's trying to make money, Andrew. It depends on the place.
No, not necessarily. You go there and you go to a bar. They're not giving you a cocktail list. You go, hey, listen, I want a Scotch on the rocks, and there's a little ice cube in there, and then you don't really know how much you're getting.
Oh, let's see. You wouldn't order Scotch like just that way. If you were an actual Scotch drinker, you're gonna be specific. I want answers, people.
Right.
Tell me what Scotches you have on your bar, and then you make them bring you 2 ounces of that so that you get a proper sample.
I like to ask like what their most expensive is, and then take their cheapest.
Yeah. Just to get a feel.
And do it aggressively so they know you mean business.
Show me the back rail. Yeah, I'll take this $10 one, please.
Yeah.
Not aggressive enough. You say, I want the $10 one, okay? I'm not above paying $10, you know?
No shame here.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the drinking process. We've poured. We've let it sit.
It's sat.
It's sat to consume. Anything special here?
So the first sip's always going to be a pretty rough show because your mouth has just been drinking water and salads all day. If you're Andrew, and then you
you know me, I love to drink my salads.
Lens it,
and then you so you take a little guy. Let's do that. Right, let's go in there. Just take a little dab around the tongue there. Now don't swallow. Do not swallow. You swirl that around a little bit.
Try to have a podcast when you have liquid in your mouth, though.
You got to get to know it. There's a Richard Patterson video on YouTube everyone should watch. Don't throw the Scotch out like he does though, but just you got to get to know the Scotch in your mouth. What's going on here?
Okay, I had it around for a little bit. I think I'm fairly familiar.
Did you notice anything specific on your first little sip?
Again, this is something that you mentioned earlier in the pod. If you do not have a trained tongue for such a thing, you may not be able to tell the huge difference between Scotches if you're not drinking them back to back.
Absolutely.
This is a long-winded way of you saying you didn't notice it.
Well, yeah, but this is the inquisitive bro. I need to sound intellectual, Christopher.
Yes.
Fine,
He's got to drag it out.
Fine, you can be the inquisitive. I'll be the bro. I didn't actually notice anything other than it was alcoholic.
Yeah. Okay. So, but did you notice that it was sweet? Was it dry? You got to start small. You got to start not picking out very specific things off the jump. Was it very light? Was it very...
I've got something.
Yeah.
So initial taste
Yeah.
was light.
Yes. It is very light.
Is that correct?
Yes, light.
Excellent.
Very light-bodied.
Yeah, it did not punch me in the face initially.
Yeah.
Keeping it in there itself, flavors came in. And then when you swallow it, I wouldn't say there's anything too noticeable as far as an aftertaste.
Right.
The taste that were in my mouth once I swallowed it, similar tastes.
Yeah.
Is that the same experience
Yeah.
you
This one's
had?
not a very long finisher, for sure.
Okay. See, man, I'm doing very well. I
He's
thought
doing great so
yeah.
far. And yeah, you're going to get that. Younger scotches, their finish isn't usually as long. It doesn't burn, feel that warmth in you for very long.
Right.
One of the things I noticed specifically with Glenmorangie 10, and this is also very subjective and very much about what your palate is like as a person, like what you've consumed over your life as a frame of reference. But there's a distinct note of apple for sure. So if you guys go in again, I'll start thinking about that. Start thinking about that apple. Maybe a bit bigger sip.
Maybe.
I didn't get it. Didn't get it.
Yeah, I think I'm tasting the same thing I tasted the first time.
Yeah.
Can't pick out the apple.
No? Okay. Very fair.
I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe it's in there.
Yeah. It's sweeter. It's a sweeter jam for sure. You get the barley sugars in there for sure. Vanillas for sure.
We're putting Matt's tongue on
The things
trial
that
here,
Matt
man.
is doing with his tongue
should
right
we just
now.
do
if you could
ASMR
see
right
that.
now or what? Let's get this even closer.
I liked it though.
Right.
Is this something that I would enjoy sipping? Yes.
Great. Perfect.
It was a good
And that's-
experience.
And that's where it begins.
Right.
So beginner malts like this, you start oh, this is actually quite enjoyable. Now, what my problem was when I first started drinking scotch and bottle killing in a week, right, is you're not spending enough time with the malt to get to know it until and even the bottles change over time being opened. The lower you get down in the bottle, you're getting different nuances. But if you do that within a night or a week, you don't even get that opportunity for the air to start to affect the whiskey.
Okay,
So the whiskey's actually going to change over time
Yes.
with the same bottle that you bought.
Absolutely.
So this Glenmorangie can taste one way when you first open it, and
Absolutely.
then different tones will
Yeah.
come in the later you go.
So this is a good time to talk about storage.
Yes.
So you purchase a bottle, and now I'm going to give you my wine experience. Open a bottle of red. It's great that night, right? You want to decant, let it sit out a little bit, let it air out a little bit. It's great that night. If you cork it, it's okay the next day. Only 24 hours later, it has changed
Right.
drastically.
Yeah.
You may not like it,
Yeah.
but you can still drink it.
Yeah.
48 hours later, in my opinion, it's now cooking wine.
Yeah.
And 72 hours, you're tossing it.
Yeah.
So how does a scotch age differently?
So you're dealing with a much higher alcohol by volume, right?
Right.
You're talking about 40 to 60 sometimes %, right? And with wines, they're just not able to handle that kind of air for that long. It takes a lot longer for the air to evaporate and aerate the whiskey than it does a wine. But again, it depends on the fill level too of the bottle. So now when you're in your final 30% of your bottle, it's going to aerate so much faster. It's less alcohol in the bottle, way more oxygen, and it's just it's
Now,
going to ruin it much faster.
when you are at the final 30%, are we at a point now where it is bad? Not necessarily just different, but has it spoiled?
No, but it goes flat or more flat or stale.
Okay.
Not necessarily gone bad. It's not bad by any means. I have some bottles in my shelf that are from 5 years ago,
I see. Okay.
4 or 5 years ago.
So shelf life, although it changes, is how long? Is it infinite? I assume it's not infinite.
I mean, if it's a closed bottle, it'll last forever.
Okay.
If it's never been opened, forever. But what might end up happening is that it'll actually start to evaporate in the bottle because a little bit can still escape from the cork at the top.
So now, as far as storage, you actually taught me something a couple years back, which probably ended up saving my life.
Yeah.
So my wife Rebecca, which listeners out there will remember her from the Girlfriend Trivia Corner, as a gift, she actually bought me this beautiful crystal Scotch set. Right, a couple glasses, a nice little. What would you call that? That piece, that glass piece.
Oh, a decanter.
Is it a decanter? Yeah, nice little, perfect little crystal ball to go on top. And I'm thinking, this is great. You remember my old place downtown?
Great spot.
Great bar, right?
Yeah, great bar.
I'm thinking, listen, I can pour my ball into there and just let it sit, and it'll be beautiful. And then you told me, good thing I didn't do that because I would have poisoned myself and I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Right, because I mean, a lot of decanters, people don't use them for actually decanting anything. They'll have them sitting in their china cabinet with all their other pretty glass, and it looks so nice, and they never use it for actually decanting anything. And you don't need to decant Scotch or whiskey at all, anyways, because it's not like wine. But it's that same effect almost, right? Where if you leave a bottle of wine to aerate on the table for 10, 20, 30 minutes, it's getting better, right? And it's kind of the same way with Scotch. But it happens way slower process. So your sweet spot of your bottle might be after a month of being opened, as opposed to 10 minutes or 20 minutes in a decanter for wine.
So these beautiful crystal configurations that people put out on their bars, they're what you're saying is they're really just for show.
They are totally 100% for show, for
because
whiskey. For whiskey.
TV and movies have led me astray. Because every time you watching a show and they walk into a room, that whiskey has already been poured. It's on the bar. It's in the decanter, and they're serving people out of there. Now, why specifically is that dangerous?
Well, if it's leaded crystal, decanter, then there's lead in it.
And you may be thinking, oh, these are cheap decanters. No. Mine is very nice, and it was very expensive, and it is gorgeous. And it will still kill me.
Absolutely. And they've because a lot of the like glass blowers and whatnot, they work with crystal because it gets a more sparkle. It's a thinner material, so you can get some really nice exact shapes out of it. Right. But that's also because it's got lead in it.
Right. So lead poisoning bad is what you're saying.
Bad.
Gotcha. So you actually gave me something as a replacement, though, right?
Yes. So I got a decanter that is crystal free or crystalline. Is what I think it's the proper term is crystalline, but it doesn't have any crystal in it or lead in it, so you're fine.
Perfect.
It's safe.
Good.
And like with the movies and that where they have the whiskey in the decanter, it's because it's for show, but it can have a practical effect. So, for example, on Friday just past, I had a couple friends over, and they wanted to try some Scotch, and I recently got a decanter, and I had it engraved with my favorite distillery on it.
Nice.
And so I poured their standard entry-level 12-year-old into it, and I brought it to the table to give them some, and they're like, oh, that's a really nice bottle, like what's in there, right? So their experience is heightened because they believe that it's going to be an experience. And whereas before, they've never heard of this distillery. Everybody's heard of Macallan, you pull out a Macallan, everybody's going like, ooh, it's beautiful, right? It's going to be so amazing as an experience. But then you pull out the decanter and it's got some other random name that they've never heard of, but it looks amazing. It's going to heighten their experience.
Right.
And it's going to also allow them to maybe not come in with a bias that it's going to be bad because they don't know what it is.
I mean, that's similar to a lot of different bottles of alcohol across the spectrum. Like, especially when it comes to wine, the big fancy, $30, $40, $50 bottles versus like the $12 bottles. You have to have a very high level of wine expertise to be able to really tell the difference between the two. In a blind test, time and time again, they've shown people, the average person walking into an LCBO cannot tell the difference between a $15 bottle and a $35 bottle.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not a wine connoisseur by any means.
Or a $15 box.
Right, yeah. I'm going to be honest, I think I could probably, I hate that box wine. Listen, for me, I'm going to just let you know this. If you're having me over and you bring out that Jackson Triggs box wine, just tell me ahead of time that's what we're serving. I'll bring my own.
Hey, why are you hating on the box wine? If you ever went to Australia, you slap that goon bag, buddy.
I buy Australian wine here. Isn't Yellowtail Australian?
Yeah, but that's in a bottle.
Yeah.
You gotta get it
I
in
don't need
box
my-
/ bag format.
I
I
don't
do
think
like
so.
Aussie wines. I do like Aussie wines. They're good stuff. Yeah, so decanting, but this leads to a whole other subject, right? About presentation
Right.
and like branding of bottles and people thinking that means it's going to be good. I can't tell you the amount of times that people come up to me like, oh yeah, I was thinking about getting a gift for somebody and it was, Dalmore 12 and I'm like, oh, that's garbage. Please don't get that for them. Get them something nice. This is your friend. So,
You love this person.
and I was like, oh, but it looks cool.
Right.
Okay, well, it looks cool. I hope they also think it drinks cool
Right.
because it's not good. It's it's colored heavily. It's over marketed, over presented, and so you're compensating for something,
Right.
right? You don't need to look that good if you are good.
Is it kind of a rule of thumb then? Like the more, more time you put in the presentation of the bottle, like a company itself, and more effort you see in like the specifics of the bottle and the marketing, then is it probably not as good a Scotch versus something that's more understated and just presented as like, here you go. If you know, you know. Like I don't.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to say because there's good ones that are presented well. There are bad ones that are presented badly and they just don't try and they're not good. But and then there's ones that are great and look good, and that's kind of like the area that I'm looking for too. Like I'm a sucker for presentation, absolutely.
What's one that's great and looks good?
What's an example of one that looks good and also tastes great? Like because I also like a little bit of an understated look too. Like Lagavulin isn't some kind of massively beautiful bottle like a Dalmore 25 with their big box and things like that. They have these small little cardboard boxes, a dark greenish gray, and it's but it's like I think it looks beautiful. It looks like it belongs on some old rich man's shelf, and it tastes great too. Like their 12-year-old is renowned.
Right.
The 16 is like the beginner's peated amazingness, so
You actually brought up something interesting, and since we're talking about misconceptions, I'm going to jump into this now.
yep.
True or false, Scotch is solely to be enjoyed by middle-aged rich men.
Nah, man, like it's I mean, the problem is the youth of today. They don't have all this time. They don't want to spend time thinking about what they're drinking. They just want shots,
Right.
and
Right.
they're not, I don't know if they have the patience for it. Like with Instagram and all this stuff, and they're just scrolling on to the next thing as quickly as possible.
Right.
You don't have time to take in the nuances of a fine, crafted.
But see, I say this about everything. Anything worth doing is hard to do.
Yeah,
Anything worth
absolutely.
doing takes time.
Absolutely.
I think the fruits of your labor are going to pay off.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you want to just like chug back Pabst
Yeah,
all day
go
long,
for it.
2-4 for 2-4,
Be my guest.
it's cheap, it'll work, but that's just really, you gotta, once the age starts kind of creeping up, you gotta kind of move
First
off
of all,
that.
just so
absolutely.
you guys know, Pabst Blue Ribbon is marketed as a rich man's beer in China, and it is very expensive there, and only the wealthy drink it. So, take back your shit right there. Don't you knock PBR, which I drank plenty of out of kegs. I actually hate it because of that. Yeah. Typically, it's very warm. Matt, I want to jump on then another thing you said earlier about today's youth. I just want to get your opinion on, like, is it really today's youth, or is it just the fact that, like, young people in general really maybe don't appreciate Scotch as much because, like, they don't have the palate for it? Just frankly, my dad would tell me he didn't like Scotch when he was younger, and I don't know if a lot of people do. I wonder if it's just a testament to like your age instead of the generation you were born in.
Yeah, I mean it's really, I think it has to do with a curiosity level, right? And being able to go the distance. Like I didn't like beer when I first tried it, I mean, and I love beer, so now, but yeah, I think it's the same with Scotch. and I think it's any generation's young people. We're probably all the same. That's why it's got the reputation for being an old man's drink for years and years and decades and whatnot. So
it's also expensive relative.
It's expensive, sure, yeah.
However, I think bang for your buck, like we're talking about a college kid here.
Yeah.
I mean, 2.4 of Pabst versus a $60 bottle of Scotch. I think you're getting way more bang for your buck with a bottle of Scotch.
Absolutely.
No, you're getting way more bang for your buck if you get one of those 40s of Old English for $8.
I guess that's true.
For Edward,
there is a balance that we're looking for bang for your buck and
Right.
being able to swallow
Right.
the said purchase.
Oh wait, you're supposed to enjoy this?
You don't have to. You could bottle kill it in a night, I guess.
I
But
guess you could. I'm gonna blast through quickly some of these other misconceptions. Women do not drink Scotch.
not true. There's a wonderful lady out in Calgary who works at a wonderful. It's basically Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of whiskey out in Calgary, and she is a Scotch aficionado. Her excitement levels are super high. Her name is Harmony Pollock. She's awesome. She's a great whiskey friend.
Really?
And yeah, she just got promoted
Good
at
for
her
her.
job for.
So instead of Oompa Loompas, do they have drunks?
Yeah, basically they camp out, and when you pick up a bottle from the shelf, they do the whole oompa loompa, and it's a whole thing.
Sounds like a great place to work.
It's a beautiful place.
Now, see, this misconception, I feel like pop culture has a problem with that.
Yep.
Because let's say you go and you're checking out a Bond movie, it's pretty rare that she's the one sitting there with a Scotch and James is ordering like a Bombay.
It's true. And it's sad too, because like I wish more women got into Scotch, because I feel like they have a way better nose for this kind of stuff. Like they can, when I give my wife stuff, she can pick it out, right?
That's true. That's
pretty
true.
easily. And other girls too. My buddy J-Moff, his wife, she's like, I think she's got a future in the Scotch game. We'll see.
Maybe. Maybe.
Now,
So yeah, I wish more girls got into it.
Now, are we just is this just because women don't think about drinking Scotch, or are we underplaying how good vodka with a splash of cran is? Because that shit apparently is pretty darn good.
Other misconceptions. I know you want to touch about this one. Adding ice, adding water is simply a sissy way to consume a difficult beverage.
This is an important topic, and it's a touchy subject for some. There's people who really like their Scotch on ice, man. But
they also market special the circular ice ball, stuff like that, specialty. Even the rocks. Now you have the cooled rocks, which don't work, by the way.
They don't work. That's what everybody keeps saying.
Turns out you can't chill rocks.
Yeah, if you're thinking about getting whiskey rocks for a friend, just don't. And but ice, the whole idea is that it's too strong for me to drink like this neat, right? And so I have to add something, and I want it to be cold, so let's add ice because it's so hot on my mouth. Wrong answer. Because what ice does, it has to do with the tongue and the receptors in the tongue and everything, and it shocks the system. It shocks your tongue, the ice, the cold. Your tongue can't handle extreme hot or extreme cold. Right. We know this because when you drink some hot coffee, it burns, right?
Yeah.
You drink, and it works the same way with cold. Shocks the receptors. They can't taste the flavors. So if you're just trying to knock back some whiskey, and it's usually you do it with crappy whiskey. That's why you put the ice in it, because it's really hot and it's not very flavorful, and you just want something. And so, but the ice, it just shocks your system. You can't taste the flavors, and that is what Scotch is all about: finding those nuances, those hidden flavors, and you're just scaring it away.
So Scotch on the rocks is a term. Yeah. You believe that to be an amateur term?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you like it, you like it. But if you think that you're a Scotch aficionado and you're putting the ice in there, I'm sorry, you're just missing out on a whole lot.
Right. Now, a dab of water, I feel like you're going to have a different view on this.
Completely different view.
Okay, so tell us why.
So water does not shock the palate. What it does is, a couple of things it does is, first, it separates the fats and opens up the whiskey to to be more. It's stronger on the nose when you add water, even, so you can pick out those flavors a little bit easier on the nose. It's on the palate, cuts the alcohol burn so that you can access those flavors. You know what I'm saying? So, and really, at the end of the day, you don't know until you try it, and
Right.
you're gonna find with a hotter whiskey. So this next one actually that I brought, the Lecheg 10-year-old, it's 46.3% alcohol. The Glenmorangie 10 was 40% alcohol. So this is going to be hotter.
Right.
And but it's very peated, and it's amazingly delicious.
So would you say that adding water is just preference?
It can be, absolutely, or out of necessity.
I see.
Whether because there's cast strength whiskeys, and there's some aficionados who will say, "Oh, I don't add water to my whiskey. That's crazy," And it's like, well, how do you know all of the range of flavors in the whiskey? I'm sorry, you just can't. It's too hot. There's no way.
Right.
And some of them, they don't drink as hot, but it's still nice.
All right, Matt. 10 people walking to a bar. They each order a glass of whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those 10 are posers?
Oh, 9.
Yeah, and the other one is you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's 9 probably.
Kind of offended because that implies that I'm probably a poser if I'm even invited.
you're
I'm
probably
either
not at
I'm
the
either a
whiskey
poser
bar.
or I'm not even invited. In which case, what am I then? Even worse.
It depends. If they are they ordering like different scotches, or are they just ordering I just want some Jameson because I drink Jameson all the time. It's great.
I'm just
stuff.
looking at a random segment of the population that would order a scotch or have one in any segment.
Right. If they go into the bar and they're like, you know what, I'll order a Dalmore 12. Thank you very much. Then they're a poser.
Right.
Also,
Now,
with
Well,
also
on
with
the
fake accent.
rocks. Yes, Dalmore 12 on the rocks, sir. Thank you. And it's.
And then the buddy beside him goes, Jim, you're from Sudbury. What's with the accent?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. But going back to the water now. Okay, so
Yeah.
real quick, because we're going to want to jump into this new bottle, tell you what we thought about it. How much water, when to add, how to do so.
To taste, really. If it's too hot, it's too hot. Put a couple drops in there. It ain't gonna hurt it.
Okay, so a couple drops. As far as how much you really putting in there?
So we got a teaspoon here and we got some water. A teaspoon is 5 milliliters. A 2-ounce pour is around 50. Okay, so if you put a whole teaspoon in, you're only getting what? It's 50 to 55 ratio. You're barely touching the percentage on there, right?
So that's fair. That's a fine amount to add.
It's a fine amount.
Okay.
But yeah, and you're gonna start to get some differences when you start adding like 5 drops. A drop's like a mil, and so you add 5 drops. It's gonna change it pretty well.
Let's break. Let's pour.
Well, I just want to, before we do that, I just want to kind of summarize quickly what Matt just said, because I think this is kind of one of the more interesting points we brought up, because myself as a very novice whiskey drinker, I had no idea about the difference between the ice and the water, because in my mind, it's ice just becomes water anyway, what would be the difference? So it's very interesting that you point out that putting in pure water, doesn't matter if it's room temperature, does that help actually?
Either room temperature, you don't want it to be cold is the key, because the cold shocks the system.
That's the interesting part to me, because it's actually the water itself actually accentuates the notes and tones that you want to experience if you're looking for more of the connoisseur type of experience. Whereas ice, it's not the water itself that dilutes it; it's the fact that it just shocks your taste buds. I just find that very interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, facts are here, guys. These bottles all have water in them. These are 46.3% alcohol.
Right.
They water it down before giving it to you so that you can palate it. That's why this is 40%, because they cut it down.
Right.
So that you can drink it and say that it's so smooth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
When it's smooth, has nothing to do with it. Smooth just means it's less flavorful, really. Because they've already diluted it.
That is funny. The interesting point that you mentioned, people don't want to add ice because I get the ice, but even the people who don't want to add water, what they didn't understand was you're drinking mostly water. This is 2/3 water to your 1/3 booze.
Absolutely.
So that's a good point. Again, we're gonna pour this. This looks like a nice bottle.
Oh, yes.
Matt is graciously opening this for the first time, so I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna bring it back and we'll see how it goes. We hope you're enjoying this episode of the Inquisitive Bro podcast. We know you listen to us, but more importantly, we want to hear from you. Did you disagree with one of our takes? Did you catch a mistake that we made? Do you have your own take about something we discussed that maybe we didn't consider or failed to mention? If that's the case, we want to hear from you. Hit us up on Instagram at the Inquisitive Bro. Or if you want to just reach out and say what up, that's cool too. If you make a good point, bring us an interesting take of your own, or you get us talking about something cool you brought to the table, you just may hear us giving you a shout out and discussing your take on our next podcast. Alright, well, we're not done yet. As always, thanks for listening. Now, back to the pod. Okay, so bottle has been poured. I'm getting a whiff of a lot here.
Big peat.
Yeah,
Big peat.
very potent. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we are about to drink?
Okay, so this is Lecheg or Lechik 10-year-old. It is heavily peated. It is from the Tobermory distillery.
And again, what do we mean by heavily peated?
So actually that's a good thing to talk about. What is peat exactly? So peat is a type of moss that grows in Scotland. And it grows by the rivers, it grows wherever. And when they've got their mash of malted barley, they have to dry it somehow. Usually, if it's unpeated, they air dry it. But sometimes they will burn peat and smoke the grain dry so that it has this really heavily peated smell from the moss.
Gotcha.
And also, the water that they use in the distillation process can also have mossy, peated moss, like taste to it. And so when you combine, say, the peated water, the smoked barley, and the barrels that used to contain peated whiskey, that's where you're getting that really heavy peat smell and taste.
Now, when you say peat smell, like the previous whiskey that we tried, I didn't really couldn't tell too much from it in terms of one from the other. This one, I can smell right away that it's very smoky to me. Is that what the peat does?
Yeah. So Glenmorangie, they don't really peat their whiskey. If they do, it's very minimal. But I don't think they do. But Tobermory Distillery, they release their Lecheg brand, which is where they smoke their barley. And then they release bottles under the Lecheg brand.
Okay, so with that being said, let me ask you about this. Age on this one, I believe, is 10?
Yes, it's 10-year-old.
So another noob question here. If this was a 15, is that guaranteed to be a better bottle?
So not necessarily. The age statement, just what it can do is bring that complexity that we talked about earlier. So, but what happens with peated Scotch over time, the phenolics and of the peat smoke can dissipate in the barrels. It evaporates with the barrels. The air gets in there and it starts to dissipate over the years. So a lot of the best peated Scotches are young bottles.
Gotcha.
And famously, Bruichladdich and with their Octomore line, which is their super heavily peated line, it's the peatiest Scotch in the world, and they're only around 5 years old.
Oh wow.
So age is just a number, but it can tell you a lot.
Right. Good to know.
You're just getting different things with different ages. So
I see. Makes sense. But the funny thing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way you're describing it is that it's almost by preference based on what you're looking to get.
Yep.
However, they are not priced that way.
Correct.
Typically, the older ones are priced higher.
Yeah. And that's because, again, you're getting complexity. You're going to get that smooth, as you get a lot older too, because they just become a little bit less, the alcohol evaporates over time.
Right.
In the barrels. So there's whiskeys that they have to beef up with either younger stuff or more powerful stuff because over time they've dropped below 40% and they can't sell that.
Right.
But yeah, it gets more expensive when it gets older because there's less of it because it literally disappears into the air.
Right.
And so and it also takes a lot more time to get your return on investment with an older barrel. And it's so rare. Like you don't know what a 50-year-old Scotch tastes like. I don't know. But it's expensive, not for a reason.
That's true. I guess you are putting in a cost of bringing it to you.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, man. 50 years, like you got to do a lot to make sure this thing is still around 50 years later to be able to bottle it and sell it to you. So, understand that. Let's get into what we're about to drink here. Should we do a taste 10. And see how it goes?
Yeah. So this guy is, again, super smoky, super peated. And it's been described on the nose as hot garbage, but in a good way. Like the smell is of like burning garbage.
It's a good thing that that's a smell I love.
Yeah. Like a industrial dump or something.
It doesn't smell like that to me. It kind of smells like a little bit like almost like smoked bacon or something.
Yep, there's definitely that note too. And because Lecheg is it's on the Isle of Mull, they get also a little bit of a salinity from the sea air in there. So you might even catch that note in this. All
right, I'm gonna give it a try.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, first of all, initial reaction, you can definitely tell that this one is stronger than the first one we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's coming in at 46.3%.
That initial hit was, oh, what is this?
Are you getting the aftertaste?
Well, no, I dealt with the aftertaste. There was yet a second aftertaste that came again. That was nice. That was enjoyable.
Yep, the finish. It's a big finish on this one.
It really is, eh?
It's not as long, per se. It's longer than the Glenmorangie, for sure. But it is definitely a more complex malt, for sure.
There was a couple different things
more obviously complex, anyway.
Yeah, there was the typical swallow aftertaste.
Yeah.
And then it almost settled, and I'm like, okay, it's done. I started talking, and then something new came. I felt like that's when the smoky really then showed its real head there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's smoky throughout, from start to finish, from the nose to the palate. Even you can taste that mossy, earthy smoke in there, and then on the finish, big
Here's
time.
the difference between the first and the second bottle. I'm still it's been what, 30-45 seconds since I finished it. I'm still tasting those flavors.
There you go.
Not
Big
the
finish.
case with the first one.
Big finish.
Yeah,
It's
I just
great.
want to jump on that because I am too, and this is the first time I'm really starting to tell the difference between the scotches, because the Glenmorangie is the type of taste I'm used to when I have scotch. Like that is the scotch taste. I know it well. This kind of like threw
Now,
me
what
for
do
a
you
loop.
prefer though between the two?
Oh, this one, 100%.
second one.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's great, man.
It's
Yeah,
like
me too.
it's a lot more refined. It separates itself from like just normal high percentage alcohol, which I can.
Now, let me ask you this: are these
Mm-hmm.
both LCBO purchases? Could somebody walk in and purchase both?
So here's the thing, both $70
Wow.
at the
okay.
LCBO, which is very reasonable price, especially for the Lecheg 10. But the Lecheg 10 flew off the shelves, much smaller distillery, and it's their secondary brand.
Is there a market for buying these and simply then reselling them?
Oh, that's big
That's a
time.
huge. That's
market.
another pod.
It's a black market. It's the
Okay.
black market.
Gotcha.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there when we talk about collecting and
Good.
and all that stuff. Good stuff. But like, and Lecheg, because they're so rare. Like I picked up 4 bottles of this immediately because I knew that I want this for time, and so this is the second bottle that I've now opened of the 4, and they still haven't come back since I got it. Like I got some of the last ones in Ontario, and they haven't come back. And that was maybe a year ago.
So Matt and his wife have been trying to put up some sort of shelving above their couch for years now. Years, right? Like since the day I've known them. And now I see why it's being delayed. Because the funds are being allocated to investments. This is really an investment.
It is an investment.
Yeah. Shelves or not.
No. Shelves, they break, and then you throw them in the garbage and you get another one. Whiskey, you can hold that you can flip that 100% resale value.
Now, we talked a little bit about adding water to...
Shall we?
Now, do we want to talk about why we're doing this? Because initially, we all like the taste.
Yeah. Taste is great. Big flavors, big finish. I'm still feeling it. But what we're going to do here is we're going to see if it does actually make a difference to this Scotch in particular at 46.3%. We're going to see what kind of flavors we can maybe open up the nose a little bit.
So for a bit of a visual here, so we have a separate glass of water. We have a teaspoon, as we mentioned. Matt has poured, was that a full teaspoon?
It was about 2 ml maybe into
Okay.
this because I'm at about an ounce.
So
or less in my
40% of
pour.
a teaspoon.
Yeah.
Now, am I moving this around? Do I have to wait? Does something have to
We
settle?
should wait for maybe a couple minutes.
Okay.
And then it's going to
Place that
start
right over here. Let that do its thing.
You can
While we're
gently swirl it around. So you might even notice, depending on how cold it is in here, you might start to notice a little bit of Scotch mist appearing. That's what it's called. It starts getting a little bit cloudy, and that's because you're as we said before, separating like the fats.
While we're waiting for this to, for the 2 minutes to go by before we can consume this, let me ask you one more thing.
Sure.
Another misconception, or maybe it's not a misconception. Single malt is where it's at. That is the gold standard over blends. Is that a misconception? Is that kind of like a prestige thing, or is that the real deal?
Yeah, so the whiskey snobs, myself maybe included in that. I mean, they heavily prefer single malts. I haven't really dabbled in the blends. And I mean, the reason being is just there's way more knowledge to be gained from single malts. With blends, they take from a bunch of different distilleries, okay? And they mash them all together.
Right.
And you don't really know what you're getting. You just know the different flavors. But sometimes it can muddy the water. It could be it's just you don't know what you're getting, and that can be an adventure in itself. But it's usually not expensive stuff. It's the cheap stuff, and they just want a specific flavor profile. But with single malts, you get very specific flavors, and they're still blending it. They're blending it in-house though. Okay, they make their own flavors. This is what we want to present to you. But it's going to be a lot more awareness. You know what's going into your bottle. You know whether it's a no-age statement. You know whether it's been chill filtered and just tearing out all the good stuff from it. You know whether it's been heavily colored or not. Stuff like these, just important things. And
Right.
And then you also have like brand loyalty, because then you can, if you really like a distillery and you want to explore all the different things that they have to offer, you can. Whereas with a blend, there's not usually very many expressions there.
Would you say you have a go-to?
Me, personally, for distilleries, absolutely. Bunnahabhain is my favorite distillery, hands down.
Where is that located?
Changed the game.
And also why?
It's located on Islay. It's the whiskey, like the king of Scotch, basically, is Islay. Some will say, because they have just some of the best distilleries easily. That's where you got your Lagavulin, you got your Ardbegs, you got your Lafroigs, and you have your Bunnahabhains and your Bruichladdich, which are unpeated. But those first three, Ardbeg, Lagavulin, Lafroig, they're the kings of peat, and people love the peat. That's one of the big things with Scotch, and why people consider it an old man drink is that smoke. That smoke that is like, it reminds people of like smoking rooms with big shelves, and you got those big smoky scotches, and
Right. You got a fire, you got a nice leather-bound
fireplace.
chair,
There's a
lots of
fluffy
books that you
dog.
may or may not have read.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fluffy dog.
That's actually a good thing. We should do like a cigar pod, and just everyone can listen to us like coughing the entire time.
That makes for a good pod, like a little cough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
an
so
hour of us coughing.
Should we now drink these? The water's been in it for a few minutes
Yeah,
now.
so give her a sniff first of all, because it's already a bit bigger on the nose, actually. A little more aggressive on the nose. You gotta get your nose right in there, too.
You can't tell right now, but Matt has a very interesting technique. It's kind of like a side nose.
One nostril is stronger than the other. You might not know which one it is.
First of all, I think we should acknowledge the shape of Matt's nose. It's perfect to fit into this glass. It's almost as if he was born for this.
I like to think so. I like to think so.
One might even say
is
you
my
were
calling.
predestined. All right, I'm gonna take a taste here and let's see how it goes.
I feel like it's just a lot sweeter now on the palate. A lot more of that candied bacon now. More candied.
Yeah. Holding it in my mouth, it tasted stronger for sure.
I'm getting like Wendy's Baconator vibes.
I'm sure that's what they intended when they put together this incredibly expensive, well-dressed bottle of scotch.
Wendy is a redhead. I mean, she's from Scotland for sure.
That's true. That's true. I don't know. Thoughts compared to the first? Chris?
For me, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think because my palate is not as refined. Like, although I do still taste the difference completely between this one and the first one we tried. Like, putting in the water, I don't really tell like more tones. It's still like, okay, this is still smoky, and I still like this.
See,
Do you find it more aggressive on the tongue?
No, I find it like nicer on the tongue. Actually, that's a good point. It is like easier to palate. The alcohol itself, I didn't taste it as much.
Okay. Oh, see, now I have a differing view on that.
Okay.
For me, this was stronger, and I'm not sure if that's just because we're a few drinks in, or maybe I just kept it on my tongue a little bit longer. But
maybe.
I tasted more flavors than I did the previous.
Oh
time.
yeah, flavors. Yeah.
Yeah.
But was it hotter? Like, did it burn your tongue more?
See, I can't remember because there was so much. Like there was so much time
Go in again. Here it is. This is what we're doing. Yeah.
Well, I like to think that the listeners are drinking with us at this point.
I hope
so. Assuming you guys are, love to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, hopefully you guys added a drop here from your teaspoon.
Yeah, let us know at the Inquisitive Bro. We'll put up the pod notes. Throw it up in the comments. We want to know if you were drinking along with us. Did you agree with what our takes were on these drinks?
Now, so Lecheg has a special place in my heart too. I mentioned Bunnahabhain being my favorite distillery. So that we can get that shelf on my wall sooner than later,
Yeah.
I've tried to limit myself now to 4 distilleries, just collecting 4 distilleries.
Okay.
Bunnahabhain, number 1. I've got now, I think, 8 expressions from them. Lecheg, Glengoyne, which is an unpeated. So Bunnahabhain's unpeated for the most part. Lecheg is peated. Glengoyne, unpeated.
Okay.
Proudly unpeated. It says it on their bottles. And Longrow, which is Springbank's peated line, their heavily peated line. So 2 peated, 2 non-peated. And those are my favorite distilleries. And Glengoyne is like the sherry monster. Like they try to copy Macallan, and they use the same strain of grain even. They use like same sherry cask from Jerez, Spain. And they're amazing stuff.
So we're gonna get into the collectibles.
Yeah, right.
Can I just jump in very quickly?
I'd rather you not. All right, fine. Go ahead.
You said you purchased like 8 expressions from the specific.
Yeah,
is that
from
like different types of bottles?
Yeah, so because we have a 10-year-old Lecheg here and a 10-year-old Glenmorangie. Now that's each are an expression. Then you get like the 12-year-olds and the 14s. Those are all different expressions.
Okay, that's where Scotch gets into that middle-aged like white man, older rich man type of vibe. Like that's some pretentious ass shit right there.
Which part?
It's like I bought several expressions from them. It's like, dude, you bought a few bottles. Like just say like.
But I could have bought a few bottles of Lecheg 10, which I did. I bought 4, but I also bought their 21-year-old. So I only have 2 different Lechegs in my collection.
If I buy like a Stiegel, like normal ale, and then a Stiegel Radler, I'm not going to say like, I bought 2 Stiegel expressions.
Well, yeah,
I'm going to try them in my study. And,
okay, fine. I mean, there's a little bit of...
but that's also part of the... that's part of the mystique of Scotch, right? You have to be pretentious. It's part of it.
Slightly.
Now, as far as collecting, how or when did you decide you wanted to get into collecting? Versus simply just buying a bottle, drinking it, buying another bottle.
Right. So I was buying like one bottle at a time and trying a new one because you get addicted to trying new things, right? And so I was doing that for a while, and I wasn't like getting really good stuff. Like it was better than what I've had before, but it wasn't like amazing. But then I started getting really into this whole scene, and I started like obsessing over YouTube videos and reviews and Reddit reviews and all of that stuff, right? Going deep, like the Alice in Wonderland, down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So then I started hearing like, oh, what you need to do is buy 1 bottle to drink one bottle to keep, and one bottle to sell.
Okay.
And that kind of put me on the path of, all right, like collecting now, and that whole idea. And it's expensive to buy 3 bottles of an expensive bottle. So I always started with 2, and I'm trying to get up to that 3 level. It's hard.
Right.
But then I started like leaning towards certain distilleries and certain finding out certain things that were important to collecting, and how to have like something that you can resell at a high markup. So there's some things that you need. Big name distilleries. If you want to sell, you need to, like, if you're just looking straight to sell in the future, buy Macallan. It's always, it's the king of investment Scotch.
It's always in demand.
Right.
Okay, so I think we brought it up, but I don't think we actually talked about it. Macallan, well-known name. Is that the creme de la creme?
No, definitely
It's
not
not.
anymore.
Okay.
For sure. It's way overpriced.
Right.
End of story. Like, they have some really good stuff. Absolutely. Their old stock for sure is unbelievable, but it's astronomical. Like, you're talking for a 25-year-old, you're talking over like around $3,000
For a bottle.
for a 25-year-old bottle. But you can get Bunnahabhain 25 for $400.
Right.
And people love that stuff.
But how is that going to age compared to the Macallan 25?
So Bunnahabhain is now like that super collector. It's coming up there. Like, everybody loves it because they're doing amazing things. And we're going to talk about the criteria for collecting. This is a good segue into that, because it's like you need limited releases. Okay, so things that are never going to come again, right? 10,000 bottles or less is a really good range for collecting.
So these distilleries, will they have like specials, so to speak?
Yes, the limited release, the
Really?
special
Okay.
release, because they'll have like the 10-year-old Lecheg, and they produce like 50,000,
Which you'll find in your
100,000.
LCBO.
Exactly. And then they have their Lecheg 21, which they only made 2,000 bottles of. So and it tastes amazing, and it's an older. You got to have an age statement. Like, you don't have to, but it's really good if you have an older age statement Scotch that's from a long time ago, and that's limited, and you can't get it now. You know what I mean? So
Hold up, I got a dumb question. Mm-hmm. Let's say your age statement on the bottle is 10,
yeah,
and you hold it for 10 years.
yeah,
The bottle still says 10.
yeah.
Do people do that math when they're going out to they say, okay, so this was a 10, but now we're 15 years after the release. Is that bottle now a 25?
No. So because again, the number on the label is the barrel aged years.
I see, okay.
So yeah, and
The
then
barrel gives it flavor. Even out of
exactly
that.
the
Come on.
barrel gives the flavor. The bottle doesn't give the flavor.
See, how did
unlike
you come
wine.
on now? Chris is an expert. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's because he's been drinking tonight.
Yeah, I know, but what you don't know is 2 hours ago, this guy was drinking like Fruitopia, and all of a sudden he's a connoisseur.
Exactly.
Okay,
I
so
can be a
that's,
connoisseur in both.
Yeah.
that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah, so
Okay.
big names, limited releases, big age statements for sure, but also just great expressions that everybody loved. If it could be a 12 that everybody loved, and now there's only a couple hundred floating around in the ether. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So also cask strength whiskeys. So where they came right out of the barrel like that, it is pure, it is robust. Those are going to be worth something too, as long as it's under the other criteria. So lesser, but still big criteria. It's definitely one of my personal criterias. So like
Say it again. Run it back.
having a cask strength
Right,
bottling,
right.
not non-chill filtered bottlings. Also having a natural color. Some people don't care about that as much, but that's one of my criterias, along with the names that I follow.
What do you mean by a natural color?
So the Glenmorangie 10 here, it's very light,
Right.
and the Lecheg 10 is a little bit darker. And I should have brought something that is like super dark and natural color, because the different casks bring different colors. So the Glenmorangie 10 bourbon barrels, very light. They're like almost that yellowy pea color. And then you have like stuff that's been aged in sherry casks, and they get very dark. They can get black almost, and with a little red hue, and those are natural colors. But everybody associates, oh, it's so much darker. It must be so good. It must be delicious, right? And Dalmore's famous for this. They color it so hard, and it means nothing because the taste isn't there. It doesn't match the color, but people think it's good because it's dark.
And they must sell it because it's dark. People think it's good. They must sell.
Exactly, marketing, right? Again, but it doesn't go well with the Scotch community. They don't like that stuff. They don't like when things are heavily colored, when they're watered down to 40% because they're not getting the good stuff, right? And and I just try to keep my distilleries low, have my niche. Try to keep stuff that nobody is like looking too hard at, except for Bunnahabhain because they're just amazing. And speaking of which, I brought a bottle.
A special bottle, like a collector bottle.
This is a collector bottle.
Okay.
So, this is the Bunnahabhain Manzanilla cask. It hasn't even been released in Canada yet.
But we got it here.
We got illegally. It
here. Smuggled.
I'm not gonna say one way or the other on that one, but it was definitely smuggled in. It releases in a couple weeks in BC. But
is this a limited release?
This is a limited release.
Wow.
There are, let's see, somewhere on here. There's 9,000 bottles around that much of this stuff. It was aged in Manzanilla sherry cask. So Manzanilla sherry is known for being a really salty sherry. And so that complements the Bunnahabhain signature, which is already salty and sherry, and because they're on this island in the sea.
Right.
So,
and one thing I'll point out, I guess, is that this is so much darker. We'll throw this up in the pod notes for everyone to see like the differences between the scotches that we've drank. But this particular bottle is like significantly darker.
Well, hold on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Chris had a little bit too much to drink. That is simply just a dark bottle, Christopher. The booze inside will be light colored.
Andrew is correct on this one, people.
Never mind.
But that's an interesting point of discussion because the dark bottling, Bunnahabhain, they don't want you to think about color. They don't want you to be prejudging the bottle before you actually pour it into your glass and try and drink it.
Right.
But in Chris's defense, this is probably going to be a dark Scotch.
Well, I think we should pour it and find out.
Let's pour it. Should we open it up?
Let's do it.
Oh man, this is exciting.
Hold up, is this new?
Brand new. Like
Wait,
it just came in the mail.
You haven't tried this yet?
No, it just came in the mail the other day, and I'm very excited to be presenting.
Oh boy, well I don't want to tell
today.
people what I think of this. I want to know what you're gonna think of this.
I'm very excited.
This is gonna be your exclusive review on this.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's actually being reviewed by the Whiskey Explorer on Instagram. He's the brand ambassador for Bunnahabhain. He's been trying to get me in touch with where this bottle's dropping so I can get another one. But this is some exclusive stuff. He's reviewing it tonight, and I guess I'm reviewing it tonight too.
So let's hear the pop.
Okay, so we've poured. Now what we're going to do is, since this is a special bottle and Matt has yet to taste it, we're going to let him taste this on air and then basically just tell us what you think as you taste it. Now, before you do, how are you feeling about this right now?
Buddy, I'm really excited about this because I've been hunting this bottle and I'm really excited to do it tonight, especially because it's a really good excuse to open this. This is
I
a
think
pod.
so too. You share it with yourself, you share it with us, and you share it with the pod people. I mean we don't really share it with them, but
we're inquisiting right here. This is an inquisition on this bottle, and I'm really excited.
Before you drink that, to the listeners out there, like, you should have seen how giddy Matt was off air as he was pouring this.
I'll just wait till you see my face when I'm drinking it.
Like the stereotypical like kid in a candy shop.
Oh yeah.
Now before I want to make you wait a little bit longer. One more question before I let you indulge on this.
Yeah, let's go.
We've had a few different drinks this evening. Mm-hmm. Does the taste of those drinks affect the taste of this final drink?
It can, but that's why we drank it in this order. So we started off with a 40% alcohol, then we moved up to the 46.3. This is 52.3% alcohol. It is powerful.
Right.
I'm probably gonna add water to it, but I don't know. We'll see how it starts to palate. And yeah, I'm very excited dig in. And also there's been quite some time in between. I mean, you can rinse your mouth, but it's also, they're just such different flavors that, yeah, you're going to get something new every time.
Well, listen, the wait is no more. You may indulge and let us know.
The wait is over.
Thank you.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
The wait is no more.
It's no more. It's epic for this epic experience.
Matt's giving it a sniff. Both nostrils. Exhale.
All right, here we go.
A lot of dead silence for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
Yeah,
watching him enjoy
right
this.
now.
I got nothing to say. I'm waiting for him to let us know what he thinks, but I don't want to impede this tasting process.
It's yum.
Yeah,
It is yum.
it's good, eh?
Yeah, definitely get the salinity from the manzanilla casks. Definite sherry influence. You got those red fruits and a little bit of citrus, orange for sure, in there as well. Let me go in again. Gotta get some ASMR in here.
Worth the chase.
Yeah, worth it.
Could you imagine if like this is collectible? He opens it up and he's like, you know what? This is shit.
Yeah. This
I
is
heard
hot
good
garbage.
things. I heard good things about this bottling before I buy it. I always look for reviews and stuff like that. So I haven't bought a bottle that I didn't like in a while. That I intentionally went out to go like, I need this bottle,
Yeah.
which is good news. I'm gonna
So,
add a little bit of
water.
here just to see what we can get.
Okay, I'm gonna give this a shot.
We're at 52% alcohol here. It can take the water.
Should probably asked, how much would this bottle cost you? Like, did it cost you?
How much did it cost me? So this bottle is gonna retail at $240 in BC.
Pricey. Yeah, that's a pricey bottle for sure.
Yeah, and then I gotta find a way to get it here to myself. It's might retail a little bit less elsewhere in Canada. I paid $315 for this bottle, and got a second one on the way.
Nice.
But I also made some sales.
Gotcha.
So
It's a balancing act.
yeah, exactly. You drive your prices down so that you can keep buying. I never pay like full price for a bottle.
Right.
Right. Okay. I guess.
Chris, have you tasted this?
No, I'm about to go in.
Okay, so as you drink, I'm gonna give you my. I gave a little swirl there. I'm gonna give you my take on it. The first hit was sodium.
Yep.
Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Definitely got some salt.
It's got the heat.
Yeah.
I felt like it evaporated in my mouth.
Chris got hit. You're gonna need some water. It looks like.
Yeah.
You're gonna,
No, I'm not gonna do water.
You got to, dude. You got to. Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah, we just spent an hour talking about.
We just talked about not being that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't be that guy.
Listen, this has been a pleasure.
It has been.
Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I feel like I certainly do know more.
This was a great time, guys. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. I hope the listeners enjoyed it as much as I did.
Chris, anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks, man.
Matthew, anything
Thanks, guys.
else?
That was great. No, thanks, guys.